Do you hear that?
Can't even shout, can't even cry. The gentlemen are coming by. Looking in windows, knocking on doors. They need to take 7 and they might take yours. Can't call to mom, can't say a word. You're gonna die screaming, but you won't be heard.
I wanted something scary and kind of dreamlike. The idea that something like that is floating at me and I can't scream is a creepy child story dream. I wanted them to be old school in the sense of, fairy tale monsters, which we actually say in the show. And the idea of the gentleman being very polite, very calm and dressed kind of in a Victorian way with their metal teeth. It's got a very industrial age feel to it. And the footmen, as we called them, were sort of like the inmates of Seward's asylum in Dracula. It was like a class thing almost. There was the gentlemen and there were the people who did the dirty work.
Hush is an incredible episode that sort of redefined what an episode of television could do. It was stunning, and it was about the Buffy-Riley relationship and so much more.
When Joss first told me months before he shot the episode that he was thinking of doing an episode that was essentially a silent movie, where 5 minutes into the episode, the characters lose the ability to speak and don't regain it until the last 5 minutes of the episode, I knew I was in for a treat and a nightmare.
Joss terrifies himself on purpose. So many people came up to him and said, the reason that Buffy's so great is because your dialogue is the best I've ever heard. That's the reason the show's so great. And he hears that 10,000 times. He says, oh, okay, I'll do one without any words.
I think the scariest episode that we've ever done, ironically, without the dialogue.
It plays on very primal fears. It's about silence, it's about the inability to speak, it challenges your ability to communicate, and it just has the creepiest villains we've ever done. I think that the gentlemen are straight out of the Brothers Grimm. They're modern Grimm's fairy tales, guys who look like something from a music box from hell, and they rip your heart out, and very much in the vein of nightmarish imagery, they smile when they do it, and you don't know what they're thinking. Are they human? Are they not human? Were they ever human? You don't know. They're just malice.
The gentleman floating throughout Sunnydale was enormously impressive.
This was a huge challenge for all departments because it had to be photographed. They couldn't be CG people. They couldn't be composited objects. They had to do too much in the scene, so they really needed to be flown. When you'd see them kind of flying down the street, with no suspension, with their lackeys trailing behind, essentially what you're looking at is a very gigantic crane with many, many wires. Essentially, you've got the gentleman as giant puppets that were being moved on a giant crane rig, over the city of Sunnydale, of downtown, and we're basically removing those rigs frame by frame.
Joss hired these mimes to play the gentleman, and I think that the greatest special effect is the simplest. It was their hands and their grins, and that's the stuff that sticks with you. Also, the thing about Hush that I think really makes it so creepy is that everyone's forced to communicate without words. And when you're forced to communicate without words, you have to communicate what you really mean. It's the first time that Riley kisses Buffy. Everyone's talking too much at the beginning of Hush, and then they can't talk at all. So they got to express what they mean in different ways.
The whole part where they find out they can't speak was just fun because, everybody's going to react differently to that kind of thing. Willow thinks she's deaf at first because she can't hear anybody. Xander, of course, thinks it's Spike's fault because, they're stuck together. It's, Riley's all business, like, what the hell's going on, let's solve this, and then does something incredibly stupid, which is get in the elevator. I thought, well, if I don't talk for 3 acts, then I really will have no choice but to direct it visually. And when I realized what it was about was the idea that when you stop talking, you start communicating. The idea that language, because it is so specific and constrictive, can interfere with actual communication. Everything was about language. So every time somebody interrupted somebody or misused a word or was unable to say what was on their minds or anything like that, it was very much on theme. It was very much what the show is about.